Well, this is a no-win scenario for me. I'm taking the pro-life stance and at the same time giving a negative review to a pro-life movie. Welcome back to this mini review series that I'm doing before the release of the upcoming Unplanned. I started with The Island, which is probably the only Hollywood blockbuster that could be considered pro-life, and now I'm going to get into a couple of independent films. Starting with one that's so independent, it doesn't even start with any studio logos and just gets right to the movie. Voiceless was a thing that no one saw. It opened to exactly 100 theaters in the fall of 2016, and failed to make its measly $500,000 budget back. I tried to make it to the theater to see every Christian movie, and even I missed out on this one. Voiceless is about a former Army Ranger named Jesse who moves to Philadelphia with his wife. They become members at an old church, and Jesse gets a job as the leader of their outreach program. He soon notices that there's an abortion clinic located right across the road from the church, and is very troubled that the members are indifferent to what's happening on the other side of the street. And it's apparently news to him that abortion is legal because he reports the business to the local government. They inform him that what they're doing is within the law, so he makes an effort to convince the church to start protesting. Now, I make it no secret that I am a Christian, an American, and a conservative, exclusively in that order, which can sometimes affect what I think of a movie, and I'm always going to be honest when it does. However, I also want to be known as a reviewer who takes film criticism seriously. When I go to the movies, I want more than just a message. I want an experience, and I love looking at all the aspects of filmmaking that create that experience. Therefore, I'll never hesitate to say that a movie like Voiceless is awful. Voiceless is awful. This is yet another example of when Christian people see movies as just another way of delivering a message without recognizing any of the other key elements that make a movie. Watching it, you get the feeling that writer-director Pat Nacerto got really triggered on the subject of abortion one day, so he went home, sat his butt down, and just scribbled out the screenplay. The lead character is very one-note, and he's put in pretty much the same situation over and over again throughout the movie. He repeatedly tries to tell members of the church that they need to speak up, they repeatedly don't listen to him, until the very end when they do listen to him, and every once in a while he'll get in some trouble with city officials. Whatever depth they try to give him is very surface level. There's a scene where we learn that when he was in the war, he witnessed a woman being shot down by heavy gunfire and he couldn't save her life, so we're led to believe that this is why he's determined to save life in his home city. But soon after, we learn that his motivation is that he and his wife had an abortion some years before, and he feels guilt because of that. Okay, so what was the point of that other piece of backstory? While the lead actor Rusty Joyner is perfectly serviceable, there are some questionable decisions that the character makes that make it kind of hard to root for him. In order to give a few examples, I'll have to narrate a section of the movie in sequence. Jesse tries to talk to a depressed young woman standing outside the clinic contemplating whether or not she should go through with her appointment. And it just about infuriated me how the writing in this scene cops out.
God will forgive me, right?
That is a complicated question.
When trying to figure out how the conversation escalates and the girl storming into the clinic, was Pat Nacerto just at total writer's block, so he thought, we can just drown that part out with the soundtrack and let the audience fill it in themselves. Stands to reason they're better writers than I am. Later, Jesse is sad to find out from a newspaper article that the girl committed suicide, which must mean it's a really slow news day. I mean, more awareness should be brought to teen suicide, but how does this kind of story about an average student make headlines? Whatever the case, Jesse decides to go to her funeral. I get how horrible he feels for her, but considering the fact that he was a stranger to her and none of her family know him, attending her funeral comes off rather intrusive. And who could have even invited him anyway? How do you know when and where her funeral was? The family throws him out when they find out that he was the guy from the church who, quote, messed with her head. This puts him in such a state of frustration that he goes back to the clinic and shoves the girl's picture in the faces of the people in the waiting room.
Did they tell you that you could wind up like this girl? Did they tell you that?
He even goes as far as to assault a security guard who forces him out. I'd be able to get a little more on board with this movie if he had come to realize that he shouldn't have done that. It would have made the point that he's not perfect. But the movie plays it up like he's just 100% doing the right thing and everyone is just flat out against him for it. This is what I'm talking about when I say that I have a hard time rooting for this guy. There's also a sequence where a deranged man drags his much younger wife into the clinic for an abortion because she's pregnant with a child that isn't his. When Jesse tries to help her out in this situation, the man pulls out a gun on him.
No, he turned it sideways. Kill shot! That's a kill shot!
Fortunately, a policeman passing by takes the man out, and as he bleeds out onto the street, we get this slow zoom in on the clinic's sign reflected in the pool of blood. I haven't seen such brilliantly hidden symbolism since the burning diploma in the remake of Endless Love. I'll give the movie an ounce of credit for trying to humanize women who feel the need to get an abortion. That's important in any movie that deals with the issue. But it doesn't do it particularly well. Like every other character in the movie, the women are just plot devices given the most minimal development. On a technical level, the picture and lighting in this movie are horrendous. Every shot has the same dull gray tint to it. This is an ugly looking movie. Sure, it was on a small budget, so I wasn't expecting The Revenant or anything, but couldn't they have at the very least gone for the cinematography quality of Fireproof, a movie that was made for the same amount of money? And I wanted to save this last point for last because it's kind of a problem I have with some fellow pro-life Christians. It's when too much of a religious element is brought into the movement. In the movie, Jesse hardly uses anything beyond his beliefs to sway people from abortion. He never neglects to say that the baby is a child of God. I see this sometimes. I see pro-life signs that evoke God's plan in Bible passages like Jeremiah 1:5. Don't get me wrong, I believe in the words of Jeremiah 1:5, and the whole Bible for that matter, but if all we use are Christian principles, it makes the pro-life cause appear less credible, especially to people who don't share our beliefs. What really matters is helping people understand the humanity of the child and the inhumanity of abortion. This is yet another reason why the movie takes the wrong approach to the subject. I hate to say it, but I hate it. This movie's horrible. It may say some true things, but the way it tries to communicate them is never effective. There's nothing beyond this guy saying, we need to protest, he gets rejected. He says you need to not abort, he gets rejected. And then people decide to stand with him in the end, and it's just boring, and it doesn't help that it's so unpleasant to look at. Even if you're as staunchly pro-life as I am, I still can't recommend this movie in the slightest. I'm going to have to give Voiceless only a 15%. Next up in this brief series, I'll be reviewing an actual good independent pro-life movie, followed by my review of Unplanned in theaters this weekend. That's a wrap. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Like if you liked, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.